What's up, Packers fans? Aaron Nagler here, ready to talk some football with my good friend Andy Herman, the founder of the Pack-A-Day podcast and the purveyor of fine Packers takes everywhere across the internet. My gosh, I saw your lineup this fall. Are you human? Are you a cyborg sent from the future? You're going to be everywhere over the internet talking about the Packers, but most importantly, you're talking about the Packers with me today. How are you, Andy?
I'm doing great. Up until this point, it felt like football was back, but now that we're talking football, it really finally feels like football is finally back. So no, it's great to be talking to you, man.
I do love how you do kind of tick things off as the, off season goes along. You get off to the, post draft and then the mini camp and then finally training camp and then some preseason games. And holy cow, I am ready for some actual football. I'll tell you that.
I am too. And then like we're gonna blink and it's gonna be week 13 and you're gonna be like,
I know. We'll be like, how did this happen? Right. Exactly. But we are coming off of training camp. It was great to see you in Green Bay. We watched this team take the field in 3 preseason contests. Looking at it 30,000 foot view wise, what's your take, so to speak, on this Green Bay Packers team heading into this season? Is there much materially different than you expected heading into training camp? Is there an area or a player or maybe some kind of development along whatever we saw throughout the summer that has changed your viewpoint? Or is it pretty much, this is kind of what I expected coming off the draft, going into the off season, and now we're here ready to kick off?
Yeah, nothing too crazy. I think a couple things stand out. I think the first one, and of course the one that everyone's most interested in, is Jordan Love. And as I've said over and over, I don't know where his ceiling lands. I don't know if it's a top 5 quarterback, top 15, top 20, wherever. I have no idea where that ends up being. But his floor to me is significantly higher right now than what I knew going into training camp and preseason. And it just seems like he has so much put together. We knew the athleticism, we knew the talent was there, but now he has this base of his cadence is phenomenal. He knows where to go with the football. He's going through his progressions. He knows where his checkdowns is. He's utilizing them as needed. His pocket awareness has been great. He knows when to escape the pocket while also keeping his eyes downfield. There is just far more that I saw there consistently than I had any idea going into training camp or preseason. So like I said, I don't know where that ultimately ends up putting him this season and beyond. There's still a lot of work to do. And we know that once teams start throwing everything at him, they're going to find a weakness and then he's going to have to overcome that weakness. Like all of those things are still in play, but the floor is a lot higher than I knew going in. And I think the other thing, and I think we had some idea of this, but there's a lot of question marks on this team everywhere. But there are some potentially really fun answers on this team everywhere besides safety. But you look at quarterback, like Jordan Love could be a really fun answer. Even Sean Clifford's been fun. Running back, Emmanuel Wilson comes out of nowhere. The wide receivers, all of them. The tight end, Luke Musgrave. The offensive line looks great. The defensive line, Carl Brooks, Colby Wooden. It feels like TJ Slayton's taking a legitimate step. Devondre Campbell looked kind of back. Quay Walker, we could go on and on. But like there are, Carrington Valentine's another huge one. Like there are some potentially really fun answers at almost every position on this team. And that to me is exciting. So those are probably the big 2.
It's funny. I'll start with the weak point first. Let's talk about the safety group because it's interesting. You list all those guys and I'm with you 100%. It's funny to me how Anthony Johnson Jr. hasn't really stepped to the fore, so to speak, but I still think there's a chance there.
Agreed.
Once he's like in the mix, so to speak, like a month or so into the season, having played a number of games or at least gone through a number of games and maybe gets acclimated to the speed of the league and is maybe hopefully allowed to, get some opportunities in maybe some sub packages. Who knows if he's even dressing for some of these games, but that's a guy where I think there you could see throughout the summer, the upside is there and you see what they liked about him when they ended up using a 7th round pick on him. I think he is swimming still a little bit. I don't think there's any doubt there, but I'm not, I'm not sitting here saying he's going to be the answer or anything like that, but I wouldn't be surprised if, and maybe, unfortunately, maybe out of desperation at some point down the line here, the Packers turn to him at least as an attempt to try and shore things up on the back end, because I'm with you. I think that's the obvious glaring weakness when it comes to this team.
I would say that there's at least probably somewhere around a 50% chance that he makes starts this year, whether it's due to injury, whether the team is
Right.
performing poorly and they just are going to start playing young players, or whether it's the team's playing well, but the safeties aren't playing up to expectations and they need to try something new and they go to Anthony Johnson Jr. So I do think there is still potential there. I think it's maybe a little bit less than what I was maybe hoping for coming off some of the stuff that I saw on tape, but I'm still very excited about him and it'll be interesting to see what opportunities he does get this year.
Speaking of opportunities, where do you fall on this? I guess this matchup with the Bears. Clearly, we've talked a lot about everything that's happened in the offseason. So I do want to look forward to this matchup in
Yeah.
Chicago, week one, kicking off. Very exciting times, obviously. Well, how do you think the Packers go about attacking the Bears defense that has had quite an injection of talent on both sides of the ball, really? I mean, they've certainly tried to, I'm not going to say, loaded up to stop Green Bay. I don't think that's the question, but
Right.
I do think it's going to be fascinating to me. And I've said this a little bit on Packers Daily. If the Packers come out, as I suspect they will, and try to throw it around the yard, or if they really button it up and maybe go against type a little bit and do try to feature Aaron Jones, AJ Dillon, and really pound the football. And I guess that's never really going to happen in today's modern NFL. But where do you see those opportunities coming on offense? Because it's week one, lots of unscouted looks. Who knows? Week one is always kind of crazy in the NFL anyway. But how do you think the Packers offense goes about trying to attack this Bears defense?
I think the first thing is trying to maybe throw some confusion at them. There's a lot of new pieces on this defense, and that probably aren't playing totally cohesive football quite yet, as most teams are not at this point in time. So,
Right.
can you throw a bunch of different looks, a lot of window dressings, a lot of illusion of complexity at the Bears, and see just kind of how they respond to it early, and then maybe attack some of those weaknesses later in the game. I think the edge position for Chicago is really a big weakness as well. They don't have pass rushers, but I'm interested to see how they set the edge. I wouldn't be shocked if they try to get Jaden Reed on some jet sweeps, maybe even Luke Musgrave on
Right.
some jet sweeps.
Who knows, baby?
Who
The
knows?
Adam Stenavich special. Yeah,
Exactly.
let's
But
do it.
even just some runs to the outside, not only to attack the edge position, but also to try and attack their corners and run defense to see what they are, if they're up to task. Tyreek Stevenson, I think, is going to be a really good football player. He's very physical too, but maybe just testing those guys out early. And then I do think they have some options too. If they are going to throw the ball around a little bit, I would look really in the middle of the field. I know they go out and get Tremaine Edmonds, but Edmonds didn't look great in his limited preseason snaps. And then you also have like a Jack Sanborn, a TJ Edwards, not necessarily known for their coverage. And I wonder if they start, using Luke Musgrave and showing off their shiny new toy in the middle of the field and seeing if they can't get some mismatches in that area of the field specifically.
I couldn't agree more. And I think it's something that we've talked a lot about this offseason in regards to attacking the middle of the field, right? And I do think the Bears possibly could present some opportunities there, but it's kind of, you damned if you do, you damned if you don't, because I love the idea of Jordan Love possibly maybe going down the seam to Musgrave or trying to attack it with Jaden Reed, what have you. But man, there's a reason Aaron Rodgers avoided the middle of the field. And as frustrating as it could be as a Packers fan at times,
Yeah.
that is where you start to push it, and turnovers can happen and do tend to happen a little bit with a little bit more regularity. I'm so excited whenever I see Jordan kind of push that envelope, so to speak. But man, I don't know. It's just, it seems like it would scream. Look no further. I love the ball that he threw up for Jaden Reed over the middle in that Bengals preseason game.
Yeah.
But that's a perfect example of a ball that, if you're not on the same page or if you put it in the wrong spot, could very easily go the other way. So as exciting as that is, again, and I don't know who knows how it plays out. That's where I'm like, man, just be careful. Just be careful, my young man. Just be careful with the football. That's all I ask.
No, totally. And, we just came off the most risk averse quarterback in the history of time, so it's going
Truly.
to feel a little bit different.
Right.
We've seen Jordan be a little bit inaccurate too. You start being a little bit inaccurate over the middle of the field and a ball sails,
Right.
and Eddie Jackson, Jaquan Brisker, those guys are going to be jumping all over those type of plays. This isn't second and third stringers in some capacity in preseason anymore. These are some of obviously the best players in all of the world at that position. So I think that's going to be interesting to see how it does. I do think there's clearly some risk reward there, but the Packers just played basically 15 years of like, they were the casino. They had the house advantage
right
there because they didn't you didn't have a quarterback who turned the ball over. You right. Almost got out of the game with like a positive turnover differential just by like accident almost in every game because of it. So there is going to certainly be a difference there.
What do you think of this offensive line when it comes to not just pass pro, and we know the kind of pieces that they seemingly will put in place. We haven't really, here's the other thing, we haven't really seen them set the offensive line yet. I know there's been a lot of talk around Josh Myers and then Zach Tom and possibly Josh Nijman there at right tackle. Rasheed Walker has put his name into the mix,
Yep.
but we don't really know how they're rolling out there week one. What do you do? You think it's going to be kind of what maybe I guess we all assume, where Myers is the starting center and Tom is probably the right tackle, or do you think they might still have a curveball up their sleeve?
I think it's probably the closer to the obvious, where they start with Bakhtiari, Jenkins, Myers, Runyon, and then Zach Tom at right tackle. They just spent so much time there, specifically at the end. But Green Bay has been known to throw a curveball every once in a while going into week one. Chris Barnes out of nowhere starting at inside linebacker. Like,
Right.
You just don't know exactly what they're always going to do. And they've had basically the end of last week, which was not open to the media. All of this week will not be open to the media in team activities. So if all of a sudden they made that switch to Zach Tom and Rasheed Walker at right tackle, or Yash Nijman at right tackle, we wouldn't know about it. So they definitely have enough time to practice anything that they want. But you brought up kind of like pass protection, run blocking. I think that's going to be the interesting thing. I expect when this group is healthy that they're going to be one of the better pass protection groups in all of the NFL. They should be. They have every right to be. It's the run blocking that I think is going to be really interesting. Aaron Jones doesn't need a ton of room in order to make some things happen, but I think that's going to be a really big thing, especially if you're trying to make things a little bit easier on your first time starting quarterback in Jordan Love. If you can run the football and have a little bit of movement up front, that's going to be huge. John Runyon Jr. in a contract year. This might be a sort of now or never year for Josh Myers. I want to see those guys step up with, I think, the other three players who I think we have a pretty good feel can play from left tackle, left guard, and right tackle.
Yeah, I'm fascinated to see how much, if at all, they mix it up as far as the type of running game they utilize, right?
Yeah,
Because we
that's going to be
know
fun.
they love the zone stuff. I don't want to say they've gotten away from it, but they've certainly mixed it up more at the longer Matt's been in town.
Yep.
But you did see throughout the summer, and certainly the training camp practices much more so, so much bootleg, so much stuff predicated off of that kind of stretch zone action, where you get the defense flowing one way, and then you get Jordan out on that bootleg. We saw some of that in the preseason as well. I'm just thinking this is probably, my guess would be, back to a predominantly zone look. It's a zone scheme when it comes to the running game, and that doesn't mean they can't throw in stuff like, some power, some trap, what have you, dependent on their opponent. But yeah, I think this is going to be a lot more zone than it has been in recent years, simply because, and that's the other thing, these guys are all athletes. They can all run. They all can move in space, and whether it's the zone scheme or whether it's like the screen game, something that we all know they've got a billion different types of screens that require these guys to get out into space. Every one of them can do it. So that's the number one thing I'm kind of excited to see. This offensive line get to work on, as far as, especially with these Bears, you got to think they're going to be amped up, going to be ready to go, getting some of that misdirection in play. It's a big key on Sunday, I think.
It is, and they have the guys to do the misdirection. There was the attempts with Amari Rodgers from time to time, and clearly we saw Christian Watson, when he got the opportunity last year, make the most of those. But I mean, you have got Christian Watson or Jaden Reed now coming on end arounds. Like, you have to be very cognizant of those guys. And sometimes there are going to be teams that start to overcommit, and you overcommit and leave Aaron Jones a gap. Now he's going to be able to gash you, or a linebacker gets out of there and AJ Dillon's got, space in front of him. Now some safeties have to make some business decisions. So I do think there's some real opportunity there. And that's like the first reason I said, I want to see if they can, throw some misdirection at the Chicago defense and see just exactly how they handle it.
One thing that got brought up on one of my Packers dailies earlier this week, and then I found a Bears fan talking about it on X or Twitter, or whatever the hell you want to call it now, that I think has some validity, actually, in regards to Jordan and the pass protection being good is obviously a dream come true. Like, if you're putting these five guys in front of him, they are going to be very good. However, as you know, pass protection doesn't just stop with those five offensive linemen. It includes your backs, it includes your tight ends, and it includes everyone being on the same page and knowing who's got what when pressure comes or drops out, or what the rules are. All of that has to be in concert, in sync, and a large part of that goes through the quarterback.
Yeah.
And everything we've seen this summer, as far as his success in these preseason games has come with very clean pockets.
Yeah.
And I can't help but have this little nagging voice in the back of my head being like, well, even going back to that Eagles game, he was in a clean pocket for a lot of it because the Eagles had no reason to get after him.
Right.
So you think back to that Kansas City start, which is obviously many years ago now, but man, it wasn't pretty. And it didn't feel like Matt had a very good handle on how to respond to Spagnuolo basically sending engage 8 on every third down. You come to this game, his first start, his first kind of kickoff starting game. I do wonder if the Bears just come after him in a big way, not only to test him, but obviously that is part of the case, but to test the line, to test all of the players tasked with protection, and essentially. Yep. I mean, it's a big cat and mouse. I don't think it'll be as pronounced as that Kansas City game, but man, it's something I'm looking for, because if Chicago puts it out there and it's on tape, you can bet everybody else will follow suit until the Packers prove that they can handle it.
Yeah, I think dealing with pressure, and as you mentioned, not just from Jordan's standpoint, but how do guys like Luke Musgrave and Tucker Kraft deal with it on the inside and
they haven't looked good at it so far.
Not necessarily.
You know what I mean? I know they're young, they're rookies. I get it, but
it's gonna take time.
That's a component of the game. And if they're going to be out there, which you assume they are, man, if I'm a defensive coordinator, I'm dialing it up.
Yeah, big time. And then, Aaron Jones, who we've seen have great success, but, there are times too where he can get a little bit overmatched just based on his size. So I do think teams are going to ask questions of this team. And we've seen the offensive line mix up assignments and calls. And we've there's been like a 2 or 3 year stretch where you're like, the Packers are good for giving up like a free runner like once or twice a game, and more often than not. So I think,
Royce Newman should hopefully be off the field. So that should help a little bit.
That is true.
A little
that
bit.
Is very true.
No doubt.
And even just like, in sincerity though, like Bakhtiari and Jenkins hopefully being out there more full time, I think is going to help with that as well. Just that experience out there. I mean, I'm hopeful that they can do it. I will say this. I think some of the things that Jordan showed, and I know teams weren't obviously, like you said, just bringing Engage in and doing a bunch of crazy stuff, but like even the play where, I think it was Rasheed Walker. It was like the one play he kind of got overwhelmed in the entire preseason.
Yes.
And the guy's like in Jordan's lap and he just kind of like stiff arms him away and like spins out. And I think that was the one he underthrew to Jaden Reed on the play.
He gets to the left, right?
Yeah, exactly. But whatever it was, like just that sort of stuff where he's showing off still his ability to navigate within the pocket, navigate outside of the pocket, extend plays, keep his eyes downfield, use his legs when needed. We saw that a couple times in the preseason. So I'm hopeful, but I do think it's a legitimate question that's going to have to get answered through the course of this season.
Speaking of legitimate questions, Andrew, let me ask you this. Joe Barry, to quote my favorite football player, Deion Sanders, do you believe? Do you believe in Joe Barry? Because Joe Barry's looking at these clips and he's going to have words for you if you don't believe, Andy.
That'd be great, by the way. I would love that interaction. That'd be a lot of fun. So no, I do not. But it's not it's not a Joe Barry thing, and it's not necessarily a Packers defense thing. I think you and I have actually had extremely similar takes on this. I think I heard one from you the other day too. Until I see it, I'm not believing it. And I don't we've been down this road before. We've seen the Packers have talent on defense. We know how many first round picks they have. We know how many big free agent money players that they have on this team. We know what the ROI should be based on how much they've put into it. We just have never seen it. And that goes back to the end of the Dom Capers era, the Mike Pettin era, the Joe Barry era, all of it. We just haven't seen the sum be greater than the parts. And until I see it, not just like for a week, not just for a 1 week, we got a defense. No, you don't have a defense. You played Mitch Trubisky. Like that's what happened in that game. Like until we see it for an extended period of time. And at the end of the season, I look up at the charts and the DVOA and everything else. And it's like, oh, they're a top 10 defense.
That's pretty good.
Then I'll say, all right, hey, you know what? That's awesome. Until then, I'll wait and see, and I'll hold my breath in anticipation.
Man, I'm so happy to hear someone else say it. It's you start saying it because I get asked a lot, and then that's what kind of been my recurring answer all summer. But you get closer to kickoff, people get excited, and I don't want to be a Debbie Downer or anything, but man, I've been hurt before, Andy. I've been hurt before, and I can't get hurt again.
And I mean, the thing with this defense, we can all look to the players, and it's really easy to talk yourself into, man, like this is going to be a really good defense. You can also go the other way and be like, they kind of only got 2 run defenders up front and Kenny Clark and TJ Slayton. And then the rest of the guys are pass rush guys. Like you've got Rashawn coming back from an ACL. Devondre didn't look the same last year. Quay had some moments, but they were just moments. Like at corner, like those guys are still going to have to find a way to tackle. Keyshawn's new inside. He got beat quite a bit during training camp in their safety room stuff. So like there's a lot of ways that we could look at this in a very positive way. And I am leaning, like I tend to lean a little bit more positive on it, but you can spin it the other way really fast too. And it's the same, like, I think that's why we, like you and I especially, try to go into this of like, what's the proper expectations going into this season? Because then if they end up being like, like everyone's going to get frustrated right away. Like, oh, I thought this was going to be the year's like great defense right away. Right. And now they're like allowing all these yards and points. It's like, yeah, like that's what it's been. Like, it's probably going to be that again to some extent. So I think just proper expectation setting is the best way to go, and then course correct as needed.
I'm really glad you brought up Keyshawn Nixon, because to me, that's the quiet worry on this defense. He did get beat quite a bit in camp from the slot, and like he didn't play a ton in preseason, so I don't think the general kind of world has gotten a look at it. But yeah, it wasn't pretty at times. So yeah, I'd be lying if I didn't say, like, yeah, that's, to me, if I'm a defensive coordinator, I think they're going to test that early and often, because where you go, who do you want to challenge, Jair and Rasul, or do you want to go after the new starter in the slot who apparently is having some issues keeping up with guys? So, I mean, it's a tough gig. Look, living in that world where they have two-way goes and they can use the whole field, and like, I get it, man. It's tough. Like, it is not easy. I think Rasul kind of found that out last year, but
big time.
Yeah, if I'm an offensive coordinator, that's where I'm scheming it up. There's zero doubt about it.
I will say too, I don't bet against Keyshawn Nixon anymore. Nope. Like he's proven, like every opportunity he's been given, he's found a way to make it successful. And I don't have any reason until proven otherwise to think that this won't be the same. And he's some struggles in camp for sure, though.
No doubt about it. All right, Andy, I got to get going. I'm going to get you out of here. I can't thank you enough for the time. Talking football with you is always a joy. And you notice we didn't even talk about special teams. You know why? Because it's all new. We don't know what to expect. I get it. Everyone's nervous about the kicker. But you know what? I'm just going to let it ride this year, baby. It's a whole reset of the roster, including the specialists. Just let it ride. See how I did that?
Next time we talk, we'll be able to break down a game. It's going to be amazing.
That's what I'm talking about. Andy, I can't thank you enough for taking the time, talking football each and every week here on Cheesehead TV. Thanks a lot, man.
Thanks, Aaron.